Welcome, and thank you for watching. It is truly appreciated. This is Cooking at Home Like a Chef, Episode 3. Today I'm going to show you how to take a full-size pork loin, break that down into family-size meal planning pieces, ready for the freezer. I'm also going to prepare a rack of baby back pork ribs, also making it ready for the freezer. In today's environment, with rising food costs, you can help control your family meal costs just like a restaurant does. Buy in bulk. Cut it yourself instead of paying someone else to do it for you. It makes a difference to the bottom line, and it will to yours as well. It's going to be easy and simple, something you can do at home, and I'm going to show you how. And here we have our pork loin. This one is about 2.5 feet long and weighs in at 6.5 pounds. You can purchase these separately or in a bulk pack, which was the preferred method I used in the restaurant to hold down cost. Sold in bulk, they are cheaper by the pound. If you have the space for it, I recommend buying the bulk pack. On this side we have what's called the fat cap. In this example, it's not very thick, which for me means I didn't pay for a lot of fat I didn't need. I found a chart that shows where the pork loin comes from on the animal. Here is Mr. Hog, which the industry divides into 8 butchering areas. Starting at the front, we have the head and jowl. Next comes the butt. I don't really know why they call it that, or why it's in the front. But just below that is the shoulder, and all the way down the leg is the foot, which the rest of the world calls the trotter. Next over is the loin, and below that we have the spare ribs and the belly. If you didn't already know it, pork belly is where bacon comes from. Finally, bringing up the rear is the ham area. Since our piece comes from the loin, we'll focus there. The loin is the rib cage of the animal. Starting at the top, there is a layer of thick fat called the fat cap. This is trimmed out and sold as lard. The loin is subdivided into 5 separate cuts. At the top left, we have the pork loin. To the right of that is the sirloin. And just below the sirloin is the tenderloin. On the bottom half, we have spare ribs on the left and baby back ribs on the right. If you're having pork from the loin, you're eating high on the hog. If you're eating spare ribs, well, they're lower. On the hog, the longer ribs are in the front and the shorter ribs are towards the rear. The shorter, smaller ribs, called the baby ribs, are found towards the back of the hog along the rib line. Therefore, they're called the baby back ribs. Baby back ribs. Moving on, if you have a pork loin with rib bone, it's called a rack of pork, much like a rack of lamb. Separating the meat from the bones, we have our pork loin. Now, if we take the rack and slice between the ribs, we have loin chops. That same cut without the bone is called a loin steak. Alright, let's get to it. Just below the layer of fat is a sinew called silver skin. If you can see it, it looks a little shiny. This can be a bit tough to chew. In the restaurant, it's always removed, unless the piece will be cooked low and slow, in which case it will break down sufficiently and we don't spend any time on it. For this piece of meat, the first cut is to remove the tenderloin that was left behind. You can see it here. It's the darker meat. Following the fat line and keeping your fingers out of the way, run the knife down, making a couple of slices to separate it. And there we are, the tenderloin. Next, I'm going to cut out a piece for a roast. The size you cut here depends upon the size of your family. For me, it's just my wife and I, so about 20 to 24 ounces does it. And for a roast, I leave the fat cap in place. Here you can see it. Clean, lean, perfect for a roast. Next, I'm going to cut out a pork roll. I'm cutting a similar size as I did for the roast, but for this one, I'm going to remove the fat cap and the silver skin. To remove the silver skin, slip the knife just under the skin and slice out and away from yourself. Don't worry if you take some of the meat along with it. I'm afraid I always do. Just try your best, and if it does happen, don't worry, I'll show you how to recover it. Once you get started, you can lift the edge, letting the weight of the meat pull down. This makes it easier for the knife to slice through. Again, don't worry if a little meat comes along with the cut. We'll get that back. Removing the silver skin does take a little time and effort to complete, but worth it for the meal. Alright, that's looking pretty good. Setting that to the side, it's time to recover those meat scraps where I over-trimmed. Using either the chef knife or the fillet knife, whichever one you're more comfortable with, lay the knife flat and slice it out and away from yourself. Don't be concerned about the thickness of what you recover. Pork, like chicken, expands when you cook it. There's more meat here than you might think. Great for soups or stir fry. Alright, that's done. Now back to the pork roll. I'm going to create the roll by starting with a slice down one side about a ½ inch down from the edge. Peel that up and continue cutting inward, all the way but not through the next edge. Turn the meat as you cut. You're basically unrolling the piece. Do your best to cut evenly, but if you happen to take a larger slice, like I just did here, don't worry, this will be pounded out later to even it out. Just try your best. There we go, a flattened piece of pork. When we're ready to use this, we'll pound it out and then stuff it with the filling and roll it back up for cooking. It will become our stuffed pork roll for dinner. Next, I'm going to cut some loin steaks. For these, I leave the fat cap in place. It makes a nice crispy edge when cooked. I cut these to about 1/2 to 3/4 of an inch thick. For a gauge, I use the first bend of my finger. Don't be afraid to trim off the excess fat if needed. Okay, I got 5 steaks out of that. These are done and ready. Alright, we're coming to the narrower end of the pork loin. Here I'll start cutting medallions. Medallions will cook very quickly, so I want to cut out all of the fat and the silver skin. There, I think that's looking pretty good. Now this meat is pretty soft and flexible. The trick to succeed here is to chill it to firm it up before slicing. When chilled firm, but not frozen, start at the large end. Cut thin, even slices. Just like this. For the purposes of this demo, I'm skipping that step, but you shouldn't. It will make the whole process more controllable and allow you to produce thin, equal slices with each cut. I'll just go ahead and finish this out. That's about all I'm going to get there. For the rest of this, I'll cut it into chunks and use it for my next stir fry. And I'm going to do the same thing with the scrap pieces. So there you have it. In short order, I've created meal-sized cuts that will be frozen away for use another day. Here we have a small piece of tenderloin. This one is about 3/4 of a pound, I'd say. 2 of these will be more than enough for my wife and I. It'll make a nice meal. So we wind up with 1 fat cat roast, 1 rolled roast, 5 pork loin steaks, a stack of medallion slices, another great meal in the waiting, and small pieces just perfect for a stir fry. I'm going to package this up and get it into the freezer, then clean down for the next item. Alright, next we have a rack of baby back ribs. Once again, these will be less expensive when purchased in a bulk pack. Step 1. Remove them from the package and rinse and dry them. It makes it easier to handle, and it will help you find and remove any remaining fragments that may be left over from their initial cutting with a saw. Step 2 is to remove the membrane. Found on the bone side of the rib, this is similar to the silver skin, only tougher. That tissue will not break down, and it's a bit tough to chew. The tools you'll need are a fillet knife and a couple of paper towels. If the edge of the membrane is not already accessible, make a small slit with a knife down one of the bones and peel up an edge. Then, using the paper towel as a grip, peel it off the ribs. It's not always easy, but it will be worth the effort. Just give it a go. You just have to peel this back. Alright, here it is. This stuff is a lot tougher than it looks for something that's so thin you can almost see through it. But look, this is nothing to sweat over. It is a bit difficult, but if you miss a piece or you can't get a piece free, don't worry about it. It's most likely someone else will get that rib anyway. Now that the membrane is removed, I'm going to portion them out. I like to serve 2 ribs as a portion. Just cut down between the bones. And there's 1 portion. Count over 2 ribs and slice between them. Then once again. Now this hog has 15 ribs. Not all of them do, and some of them have up to 17 ribs. I'll just leave these last 3 as a single portion. Here we go. Big, meaty, with just a bit of fat. These are going to taste delicious. And there we have it. Quick and easy. I'm going to package it up, get it into the freezer, and it'll be ready for the next time I want to cook ribs. Well, that's going to conclude this video. Once again, thank you so much for watching. I hope it was helpful. Hope you enjoyed it. It is appreciated.